Hi, my name is Delisa. My friends call me DK. It's so funny that this is going to be my first YouTube video that I put out there because I've been a solo digital nomad for the last few years and I've been creating content in the background but never put it out there. But this was a journey that was so personal and important and I wanted to really raise awareness. I'm 42. I'm having a hysterectomy. I was diagnosed with adenomyosis about 10 years ago, and I have severe anemia as well. So that kind of gives you a back history of some of the things that I'm going to talk about. A little bit about my journey. I've received, and I'm going to go back, way back when I had my first menstrual cycle when I was probably around 11 years old. Then through my teens, typical teen accidents, learning my cycle and really understanding it, I first started to really get extremely painful outside of the normal pain. I would say extremely painful periods around my mid-20s. I had doctors that started to treat the symptoms, put me on birth control. I had an iron infusion here and there. Then finally, I found a Black doctor in DC. I do think it is important to find doctors of similar cultural or philosophical, like shared beliefs in some sense that can help you through your journey. And sometimes there are just certain races that also go through different health symptoms that others may not. So it's just being more informed. Doctors are people too, so it's as much education as they have. She sent me to different specialists, ended up seeing a urologist who then diagnosed me with adenomyosis. And that's where this journey with it comes. And I was so happy to actually learn a diagnosis. Okay, this is what I have. Adenomyosis, most people are familiar with endometriosis. I would say that this is like that cousin to endometriosis, which happens outside of your uterine lining. Adenomyosis, your muscle tissue grows within your uterine lining. Mine surrounded my entire uterine lining. It would cause very painful, very heavy periods, and lots of loss of blood, which led to my anemia. My anemia has been as low as 3, and the highest, and that's only because I've had multiple iron infusions right before this surgery, was 10.9. The lowest part of that scale, if you know, is 11. So I've never even met the low range of the actual anemia scale. I had my first blood transfusion a handful of years ago. So what's been happening since is I typically have a blood transfusion and several iron infusions a year. Funny story, my first blood transfusion that I ever had to get, my doctor called and was like, oh my gosh, your numbers are so low. You don't feel like you're going to faint. I have a very active lifestyle, so I never really knew what high levels of energy even really felt like because I was always doing things. And so I called my friend who was in her residency at the time. It was just like, hey, the doctor said this. She was like, babe, if you don't get to the hospital right now, and I'm like, okay, I guess I have to go. So it was like one of those moments where it was just like, I just needed someone to really like talk some sense into me. And then when I got that first blood transfusion, I'm like, oh my goodness, is this what people really feel like when they have energy? Like, cause this is amazing. So I went on, because of adenomyosis, I went on Oralisa. It was so people took, like when it's in that like experimental phase, the FDA just approved it for use. I literally went on it like the week after. There was questions about bone density. So every year since I've always had to have like a bone density check, my bone density has always been fine. But my Oralisa combined with birth control worked wonders. All my symptoms went away. I felt in the clear. I felt like a human. It was like an amazing magic thing. Then COVID hit. And I just really had like this moment where I realized like how short life can be and really wanted to really think how I could kind of heal my body more holistically. And I was on birth control for so long. So I decided to go for birth control. And on top of that, I was nearing an age where it was, if I'm going to have a child, I don't want birth control in my system, assuming that it was in my system for so many years. I would say, 15, 20 years at that point. And so went off of that, some of my symptoms started to come back. Started to have some of the cramping. It was normal pain. I could work through the pain. I'm still in a remote role. So if I would have to just, say, hey, I'm going to be gone for an hour, go lay down. Everything was like completely fine. Then they started to get a little bit worse when I started to travel. So I've been really fortunate. I've been to over 50 countries, and during my travels, sometimes I would go to countries that were not as easily accessible. So I'm going to give an example of Cambodia, which I absolutely love. I wish more people would visit Cambodia if you want to see what it felt like before Vietnam. And I feel like Singapore was built up. I think Cambodia is at those stages before it actually becomes even more tourist friendly. But I divert back to the original point. When I was looking at hotels, I would have to look at like their plumbing systems. Did it say that toilets would easily clog? Because I didn't want to have to face those issues. The other thing I had to do is, our menstrual products, easily accessible? I was using the cup, which was helpful, but I also needed pads as well. And so sometimes I would have to actually pack it in my suitcase if I knew that the country that I was going into did not have it. And I typically traveled 3 to 4 months at a time. And so I would either pack that amount, or I would go to a very popular city before I went to a more remote country like Cambodia, where the products would have been a little less accessible for me. So if you're that person who's always having to make lifestyle changes because you have these heavy cycles, you can't really go anywhere, like I would have to change my travel to where I maybe had to change like plane tickets. I wouldn't plan activities for certain days. I was notorious for making sure that I tracked my cycle and really understanding my symptoms. And that's so that's what kind of got me there. So what led to my decision to get a hysterectomy? I mean, mine is trying to have a normal life, but in January of this year, I felt my body getting super tired. You start to learn your body when you deal with these symptoms for so long. And I remember running up the stairs. Now, if you see me, I got a little bit of weight on me, but I ain't completely out of shape. So when I ran up the stairs and I was out of breath, like I was trying to grasp for air, that was my sign. Because I know me. I could walk up a flight of stairs without losing breath, but that was my sign that my iron was low. I go to the hospital. I was correct. I think I was at 5. Let's say 5 is the even number. That I was at 5, got a blood transfusion. Once again, I'm used to this. I'm going through the motions. Then I had to do a follow-up appointment with the gynecologist, and I have to find a whole new team of doctors because my brother recently became widowed, and so I've moved to Connecticut to help with my nephews, which is part of my decision too, that went into the hysterectomy. Like, they are my love, a joy, and so I'm glad to lend a helping hand there. I found a doctor that specialized or said that they specialize in adenomyosis. I really wanted someone who understood this medical condition. And I knew that this doctor was booked and busy. And so that's the other thing. I also wanted to find a doctor who is also a surgeon. So that way I felt super comfortable going into this. And I knew she was going to be booked and busy. I fully expected not to have a appointment for months. And this is where I feel like divine order happens and what's meant to be will happen. I called. The receptionist was just like, today must be your lucky day because this never happens. Someone just canceled their annual physical exam for next week. I hope that person is okay, but thank you for giving me your appointment. I did not even look at my work calendar. I was just like, yep, sold. Give me the appointment. I go into the doctor's appointment. I have my annual physical. She sits down, talks to me about previous history. She says that she's going to send me to get an ultrasound to really reconfirm my adenomyosis diagnosis. So that way, if she was my new doctor, she was working off of the most recent information and can see what that lab work and things of that nature look like. She talked about different ways in which she could potentially help. Of course, people always say changing diet, things of that nature. I've done those things. She talked about hormone therapy. She mentioned that it would take 6 to 12 months. And that's the first thing she went to, especially because one, it's the least invasive or life-changing process or way to go through. And then the other reason is because I'm super young in their terms. 42 is pretty young. I'm still childbearing age. I am the one who threw out hysterectomy because I'm like, I know people of my family have gotten hysterectomies before, and talk about this because I think that if I actually understood that some of my family members had hysterectomies previously in the past, I may have made different decisions when I was younger. So mentioned it, I started doing my research. Went in for the ultrasound. After that ultrasound, I had one of the worst periods I have ever had in my life. I was crying. I was in tears. It was just painful. And it lasted longer too. Usually my pain goes within a day. Like it's heavy. I can't do things for, 3 or 5 days, but it's usually only 1 day of extreme pain. This was 2 days of extreme pain, even with all the ibuprofen in the world. It just was not helping. It was in that moment where it was just like, no, I can't live like this. I can't live with only one good week. Cause I have cramps the week before, then it's, that week. And then I'm ovulating. Can I just be normal? Can I just be a man? Just let me be a man and just live life for a second. So, made that decision, call the doctor. Can we get it set up? Cause I had the follow-up visit with her. She was fully on board with me having a hysterectomy if I was choosing not to have a child, but she did reiterate this is a permanent life decision that you are making. Years prior, I had a company, and I do encourage you this as well. If you have a company that will cover the cost of IVF, go through the process. Even if you get to the end and you choose not to actually have a child, all those appointments are covered. The retrieval of your eggs. If you decide that you're not going to have a child, now the cost is on you to have to pay for those storage fees, but once again, if your company is covered, because the out-of-pocket cost is wild. If you've looked into it, it's wild. So the number one determining factor as to why I decided to have a hysterectomy, I am having a full laparoscopic robotic surgery, hysterectomy. But I'm keeping my ovaries. And so for me, keeping my ovaries meant that I was going to have my eggs. And so if one day I decided that I was going to have children and have a surrogate, then I could then harvest my eggs to be able to do so. I've been in a serious long-term relationships before where we had decided that we were not having children. And so I kind of came to the decision that was something that I was comfortable with, but I needed that insurance policy. I'm one of those people that always needs an insurance of okay, what is my plan B, C, and D if this were to happen? And the fact that there was a 90% chance that I wasn't, and I think the chance he said was even higher than that, but that I wasn't going to have children because once again, my adenomyosis it's the muscle tissue that covers the inner part of your uterine lining. So it's very hard for an egg to bury itself into your uterine lining wall. And so oftentimes it just won't survive. It won't make it. You'll have miscarriages, all the things that are not fun things to necessarily discuss, but happens to women, may have happened to you. And I'm sorry, and I'm with you. And that's why I always want you to know that you're not alone on this journey. So I've decided that I wanted to have the hysterectomy. I schedule it for a month later. And I know things like that are moving quickly, but it was one of those scenarios where my colleague was going on paternity leave in May. And I was like, okay, well, if I get an early April surgery, I might be able to be back before he goes on paternity leave. Now, my company is extremely supportive, will help cover it. But in my particular job function, there's really only 2 people that do it. And I work for a global organization. So I just wanted to really make sure that my team was covered and that my workload didn't fall on others. But thank goodness for really great colleagues who are stepping in. I go to my pre-op appointment, and this is where I say, make sure that you're always an advocate for yourself. Ask the questions. No question is dumb. If it's on your mind and it gives you peace, calm, reduces your anxiety for asking a question, ask your questions. So I asked, what kind of hysterectomy am I getting? And then I kind of went through that. What are the risks? What are the complications? Has someone died? And in this particular case, I was having 2 surgeons perform my surgery. So that was like concern. Like, is there something wrong with me that I'm having 2 surgeons? But it's just kind of how they operate. Long story short, I think it's also, even though my main surgeon is not that old, I mean, she's in her 50s, I think she's also grooming the other person to kind of take over her practice, maybe, essentially. I don't know, just my wild guess. How long is recovery? They told me it would be about 2 to 3 weeks. Most people are normal functions at 4. Because I had a remote job, I might be able to go back to work sooner. Would I need hormone therapy? The question to that was no. Would this affect my energy, mood, or lifestyle? For my energy and mood, it should have, because my my iron levels should rise. That means my energy should rise as well. I'm removed the cervix. So a full hysterectomy is removing my fallopian tubes, my uterus, and my cervix. And so some people think that removing cervix changes your sexual life. I've seen videos where people, their post-op videos said that nothing changed for them. My doctor says nothing changed, so I'm comfortable within that particular area or that answer. What kind of support would I need during post-op? I know everyone is not fortunate to have friends, family, loved ones to be able to help support them, but if you could maybe get someone to help that first day or 2, I think that would be super helpful for just you, and to just really have that peace of mind that you have that support there. Can you get up and walk right away? And they actually encourage walking. So one of the things that I did not mention is that I also found a hematologist. She is just a gem. When I mean she has gone over and beyond, I would say even beyond my surgeon, to really just make sure that I am going into this in the best ability that I can internally. She's made sure that she's perfectly timed my iron infusions, that she was speaking to my actual surgeon. So that way there was nothing that went wrong during my actual surgery. And so kudos to her. So, so that was my post-op. Some of the questions, I had some silly questions too. Like my friend, for instance, couldn't have nails. I am a nail girly. My doctor said we are much more technologically advanced. We're more modern and advanced at this point. So you having nails does not matter. If we can't connect the little oxygen thing to your finger, then they'll use my earlobe. I asked about having to wash with like that special soap because she didn't mention anything about it. And she told me, nope, that they would take care of that at the hospital. Then I asked about dying. Like, could I potentially die? Of course, there's risk, but she says no one's ever died, knock on wood, but ask anything, silly, serious, ask anything that you need. Make sure that you are comfortable in reducing your anxiety, because anxiety and stress does affect your surgery and your recovery as well, I think. The other thing to mention is mental and physical health. I did set up an appointment with my therapist to make sure that I was fully aware of everything that I was doing and making sure that I was of sound mind going into surgery. So that was super helpful for me. And then physically, I've been working out consistently up until I plan to also up until my surgery day, because I'm going to be sitting on a couch, that couch back there, for the majority of my recovery. I know that I wanted to make sure that I did as much as I could in the beginning, because I didn't want, I was going to lose muscle. there's no work around it. I was going to be losing muscle because I'm sitting down. So I lost my train of thought when I was talking about my hematologist because she was just so amazing. But one of the things that I wanted to mention there, and one of the questions that I asked about the walking, was because I was prone to blood clots. So, or in general, people in general, you're most prone to blood clots after you have surgery. So they actually encourage you to walk. So they do encourage you to walk. So I did try to get up every hour, not saying, you know, it would be easy, but they do encourage you to move around often. So that is kind of where I am at. I am going to be documenting my whole process. So I'm going to be bringing you along onto surgery day. I will talk about post-op, my post-op visits, things that I'm doing, because while we're going into surgery, that is the most important thing, but recovery is just as important. This is a hard decision. It's not an easy one, not one to be taken lightly. I just want you to know that so many people are going through similar issues as you, and you have a community, there is support. Make sure that you do your research, and honestly, don't deep dive into things that might not be good for your wellness. For instance, I heard like some of the Facebook groups could get a little gruesome, and people talk about complications. There's always complications that could potentially happen during surgery. Make sure that you do your research, and hopefully you come back. I'll talk about also like things that I purchased for surgery and things of that nature. So hope you found this video helpful.